So if you've been listening to the podcast in previous seasons, then you'll remember that I have a feature called Ask Angela Anything, where I answer teachers' questions. And in the past, I've dedicated an entire episode to each question so that I can give a really thorough response. But that limits the amount of questions that I can respond to. And if someone asks a question that I didn't feel I could spend 10 to 15 minutes talking about, or if I felt like I couldn't make the topic feel relevant to the really diverse audience of teachers who listen to the show, then I just didn't answer it. So this season, I thought it might be fun to answer a couple of questions briefly all together in one episode. In fact, I am challenging myself to answer 5 questions in 15 minutes. Quick and to the point, which is not necessarily my style. You guys know that I like to be detailed and thorough, but I'm going outside the box here. I'm going to do something different. So here we go. This first question is from Natasha, who said, when I teach 8 to 11-year-olds, they tend to get very noisy, especially when they're doing something exciting. I think this is quite natural and it shows that they're enjoying themselves, but at the same time, it's too hard to get them back. How can I cope with that? So to answer Natasha's question, I agree with what you're saying. A noisy class doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing anything wrong. When kids are getting really involved in an activity, they just tend to forget to monitor their volume. And so as you mentioned, Natasha, that's actually kind of a good thing. It means that they're really engaged in the task. So first and foremost, you may need to adjust your own expectations for what a classroom is quote unquote supposed to sound like. Most of us have a vision of a traditional classroom in which students are seated quietly in rows with their hands folded, and we have to actively create this new vision for what we want our classrooms to look and sound like. So talk to your class about the situation. Tell them about the problem you notice and ask the kids what their solution would be. So you could say, I love to see that you all are enjoying the activities that we do, and I'm happy that you're excited about learning, but sometimes it gets loud in our room when you're working. This hurts my ears, and it makes it really hard for me to talk with you and to answer your questions. Have any of you all noticed that? Is it just me who noticed this? Okay, so other people have noticed that it gets loud in here too. What do you think we could do about it? So just sharing with the kids how you feel about the noise level and the effect that it has on you will make them more sensitive to the issue. And it will show them that you're not just this cranky teacher who's trying to take away all their fun. You're on their side. You're working for the same goal, which is a positive, fun learning environment. Invite them to take ownership over the issue and address it in ways that make sense for them. Getting students back when they're involved in an activity, so that's really best done with, I think, nonverbal signals, so that you don't have to shout over the kids and you don't have to nag them. So teachers, students really clearly define signals. And then when they hear the signal, they know that they have to freeze. It could be a bell, a clicker, it could be chimes, whatever you want. Some teachers also like to dim the lights to get students' attention. So model and practice the signal with your class as many times as needed. But try to use the technique sparingly so that students take it seriously. You don't want to interrupt their work and their thought processes all the time. But when you're ready to get them back, you're ready for them to clean up or whatever it is you need from them, use some sort of signal that cuts through the noise so you can get them back more quickly. Next up, we have a question from Amy, who asked, how do you manage transition times? My class takes any opportunity to mess around. So moving tables or tidying up is the perfect opportunity to play fight with each other or call names and so on. What do I do? So I have 2 really good blog posts that might help with this. I'm going to put them in the transcript for the show. One of the posts is called 15 Creative and Respectful Ways to Quiet a Class. And I think that will be helpful in getting your students' attention when they're noisy and when they're not paying attention during transitions. The other post is called How to Get Students to Follow Directions the First Time. And that will help you make sure that they get on task right away when the transition time is over and you're ready to begin, but they aren't. So I think those 2 blog posts will be helpful for you, but I do want to speak specifically to what I think is part of the root problem here, which is that students don't know how to behave appropriately during unstructured time. They just kind of assume it's a free-for-all. So you'll want to model and practice what they should be doing during these unstructured transition times. And then even after the kids understand the expectations, you'll want to be proactive in preventing the problem. Some groups of kids just really don't do well with unstructured time, so you want to minimize that as much as possible for them. You can create urgency with a timer. I like to use a variety of timers so that the kids don't get bored. You can use kitchen timers. You can use an online stopwatch. You can project that on your computer using the LCD projector so the kids can see it. You can even use just an old-fashioned alarm clock, or just whatever kinds of timers you can get. When kids know that they only have 30 seconds to put away one set of materials and get out another, it feels less like a break to them. It's less of the sense where, okay, I can just kind of kick back, take my time, start a conversation with a friend across the room. They know they've got 30 seconds. So that's part of it. If you pick up the pace during your transitions, that will help as well. Don't let transitions drag on too long. Keep the momentum of your lessons going. So you don't want to walk around to the back of the room and have individual conversations with students during your transition time, because this signals to the class that you're not teaching and that you won't be needing their attention again for at least another minute or two. Instead, you want to stay right in the center of the action and narrate what you see to the whole class. So keep things moving. Say, great, team 2 has their notebooks and pencils out. Fantastic. We have 30 seconds left. I'm watching to see which team is going to be next. Here we go. Team 3 is almost ready. Great work. Just keep things moving. And then when time is up, dive directly into the lesson. Give kids a task to do immediately. Like it could be finding an important vocabulary word on the page, or turning and telling a neighbor a summary of what they wrote the day before. You want to get them immediately engaged in an activity, and then you can walk around and follow up with the kids who aren't ready or the ones who are still off task. One final thing that I would say about this, if students are playing around during transitions, that's pretty normal. I would expect that to some degree in any classroom. I mean, we're talking about children and teenagers here, right? We're not talking about robots. But if any time the class has a few moments of unstructured time, they're fighting or play fighting or they're name calling, I would also encourage you to do more community building activities. You want to create a class culture of supportiveness and kindness and collaboration. And if a lot of students haven't internalized that yet, go back to some of those activities that you probably did in the first week of school and keep building your sense of community and establishing those class norms. If just a few kids are creating the problems and the rest are just reacting to them, then look into ways to provide more structure and support for the kids who need it, both during your transition and in terms of just appropriate social interaction with their peers in general. All right, I could say a whole lot more about that, but I want to move on to our third question today, which is from Chris. So Chris asks, how can you automate a classroom when you must put all materials away for others to use your space? I teach on a stage, and I have a very different class setup every day, sometimes every class period. It's challenging to refocus classes of 26 kindergartners, first graders, and second graders. They receive music and PE from me and then leave their classroom building 2 blocks away to attend my class at the end of the day, and transitions eat up all the class time. So this is obviously a very challenging situation, and it's always tough whenever you don't have your own permanent classroom space. I would advise any teacher without their own space to set up a rolling cart with their materials, a locking cart if you possibly can, so that way you can just leave everything in there and lock it up at the end of the day. Teach your students how to quickly get the right materials, use them appropriately, and then put them back the right way. You may need to spend a lot of time practicing these routines since you're only seeing the kids a couple times a week. In this week's podcast episode transcript, you'll see a link to a blog post that I have that's called 7 Steps for Teaching Any Procedure. So that will help you teach the kids how to do this. Try to be really patient with the students that you're working with, especially since they're quite young and they're just not in their familiar learning environment. Keep your lessons very structured. Don't try to cram in too much into a short time. You're going to need to be very firm about your expectations and present any kind of hands-on activities where you're getting out the musical instruments or whatever kinds of materials you need. Present that as a privilege that has to be earned. And start small. Maybe if you're doing art, maybe just give them crayons and paper or one simple instrument for music, and tell the kids they have to show you that they can handle those things responsibly. Guide them, encourage them during the activity, give lots of feedback, and then debrief afterwards so they know how they did. And slowly work up to activities that are harder to manage, things like painting. It's also a good idea to have some basic routines for starting and ending the class. So for example, you may want to always play the same song as students come in. It should be something fairly calming and maybe something that has some hand motions that they have to concentrate on remembering. And that way they're not just playing around and talking. Teach them to be singing that song, doing the motions when they come into the room, have a seat, and teach them to fall silent after the song ends and listen for you to start explaining the day's activity. So you could have a cleanup and closure song to end the lesson too if you want. That way you can review the directions for cleaning up, play the song, and then have all the students sitting in their chairs when the song ends and they're waiting to be dismissed. So think carefully about these beginning and ending procedures and plan them out well. They are going to set the tone for your instruction, and they're going to provide a predictable framework for all the lessons you do in between. So we are getting close to the 15-minute mark here. And the last two questions that I wanted to answer are sort of related, so I'm going to answer these together. These came out of the Unshakable Book Club. So Ruben wanted to know, what are your thoughts on whole class reward systems? Like when the class earns a reward when they fill a jar with marbles. And Kathleen asks, what are your thoughts on this how was my day behavior charts, where kids are moved up and down on them? I see these throughout the classrooms that I visit in my district. Also, what about Class Dojo? So thinking about all these different behavior management systems, in general, I would say that I like reward systems that focus on the positive. There's a number of pedagogical reasons to use reward systems that I think are solid, but I did an in-depth 2-part podcast post about this last season. So if you want to delve into that and this whole thing about reward systems, check out the episode or the blog post that's called "Should Teachers Reward Students for Doing What They're Supposed to Do?" And the second part of it is called Responsible Rewards, using the now that principle with students. That one will give you specific ideas of reward systems that are effective not only in the short term, but in achieving our goal of teaching students to self-regulate their own behavior. So you can delve into more of what I think about rewards in general in those 2 episodes. But to answer Ruben's question specifically about a whole class reward system, where every time the class gets, say, a compliment from another teacher, or works together to accomplish a goal, or they accept responsibility when they make a mistake. Every time something like that happens, they get a marble in the jar, and the full jar can be traded in for a reward that the class votes on. Could be maybe extra recess or ordering pizza during lunch or something. Something like that, I'd say sure. I mean, there's not a whole lot of fun things happening in many classrooms today with all this emphasis on testing. So why not, right? I like Class Dojo too. When it's used only for recognizing the positive and kids don't have any points taken away, Class Dojo can be great. I think sometimes we forget that teaching is supposed to be enjoyable, and so is learning. So let's not make it into this thing where we're spending the whole day on watching for and reacting to behavior problems. A reward system like the Marble Jar or Class Dojo forces you to look for and acknowledge and reinforce the good choices that students make and the great work that they're doing. And that's only going to improve your attitude and your motivation, which means you're going to improve the student's attitude and motivation, because it's demotivating for the teacher to have behavior systems in which you're just penalizing students and looking for infractions and issuing punishments all day. Now, I'm not going to tell you that some sort of consequence system is wrong to have, because every classroom is different. You may want to use the whole class reward system in addition to some sort of punitive system. That's what I did at first. I had both. And I realized that the reward system solved 90% of my behavior issues, and I didn't really need the punitive system. The reward system was not only more effective, but it was a lot more fun. It put me in a good mood to be constantly looking at the great things that kids were doing and reinforcing them. So doing both the punitive and the reward system, that can be a ways to phase out that punitive system slowly. So as you get comfortable with the reward system, you can get rid of that behavior chart or whatever other kind of punitive system you're using. I know there's a lot of teachers who are using those old clip charts and they want to get rid of them, but they don't know how. So add a reward system on top of what you currently do, something that's focused on the positive, and then you can slowly phase out that clip chart. So that's what I did for a year. I never used a clip chart, but I did have punitive systems where I was checking things off and tallying down infractions and that sort of thing. And then my last 6 to 7 years in the classroom, I only had a reward system, nothing punitive. It worked extremely well. Most kids really don't need a punitive system. They just need reminders and practice and encouragement and redirection. And for the ones who do need that extra support, you can set up individual behavior contracts. And these will have predefined goals and accountability and consequences just for those kids who need it, and something that's really tailored to their unique needs and the root cause of why they're acting out. So there you have it, 5 questions in 15 minutes. I'm going to leave you with a motivational quote for the week ahead that I call the takeaway truth. And your takeaway truth this week is from the original classroom management guru, Harry Wong, who said, in an effective classroom, students should not only know what they're doing, but why and how. You can solve just about any classroom management problem by teaching students the what, the why, and the how of meeting expectations and being successful. Thanks for listening. You can do this. And remember, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be worth it.